culture. There's white, Caucasian, Asian, African American, and I just like really struggle with what to fill in because you can only pick one. And I'm probably pretty sure that there's at least one test where I try to fill in half a bubble, like for white Caucasian, half a bubble, like for Asian. But sometimes I would fill in one if I felt like more of that culture that day than the other one, and at other times I filled in the other one, like the opposite bubble. But I know nowadays you have the option to fill in more than one.
How does that make you feel?
I think that it's probably more relevant to be able to fill in more than one bubble because, you know, times are changing now and there are more kids that are biracial. I knew that I felt more comfortable like around the Asian culture, Asian friends, like just after, you know, several years of teaching when I decided to switch to a multi-ethnic church. And just after, you know, a couple of years I realized my friends are Asian. Like, so even in a diverse crowd, I seem to gravitate toward Asians, like in Asian friends or Asian families, and just found myself more comfortable talking with them or spending time with them. You know, not that I didn't have friends who weren't Asian or didn't appreciate them or their culture. I just kind of noticed that being around them, there was just like their sense of humor was different, or just their customs or mannerisms were different, and not in a bad way. It's just something that was a little different than what I had been around. And when I switched to a school that was multi-ethnic, still half my class was Asian in some way, like Chinese or Vietnamese or Korean. But maybe like just being around the staff who were predominantly not Asian, it was still, you know, the same type of feeling of like, it's different, not a bad different, but just not where I feel more comfortable in. And yeah, so then I ended up going back to churches that were like mainly composed of different types of Asians. And so my friends today, I have a pretty diverse mix of friends from, you know, back when I was in school to who I hang out with now, and I would say generally most of them tend to be in the Asian category.
My name is Devin Flores. I was born in Houston, Texas. I'm 29 years old, and actually it's kind of interesting because my mother is actually Japanese. My dad is half Puerto Rican and half white, which consists of Irish and German, so I've got a pretty good mix. I guess growing up also, I probably identify more with my Japanese, my Asian side, just because my mom would, I mean, I grew up learning a little Japanese. My mom would speak to me in Japanese, cook Japanese food for dinner, so a strong Asian influence, I guess. Whereas my dad's side, he didn't really, I mean, he didn't speak Spanish, so I never learned Spanish growing up. So I guess, you know, the Asian side was a stronger influence. I've run into some people who are shocked that I don't speak Spanish, you know, and you know, sorry, I don't. You know, I did take French for a few years, middle school through high school, so I do have, you know some French, but you know, no Spanish background at all. I've also been in just random areas of public where Mexican guy will come up to me and just, you know, ask me, do you speak Spanish? You know, hola español? I'm like, no, really, I don't. Kind of give me a look like, are you serious, or you just don't want to help me, you know, kind of thing.
Did you yourself know anybody, know like friends or people that were also like kind of mixed race, whether it was, you know, Mexican and white, or like whatever, like different other races, and any much of, you know, any of that, or was it kind of you guys are kind of the only mixed kids?
Pretty much, yeah. It was interesting. I think we're pretty much the only mixed kids on the block. I mean, pretty much we knew all the kids that lived in the same neighborhood, the streets that were nearby and stuff, and we'd always hang out. But yeah, we're pretty much the only mixed kids. But I didn't feel any, you know, sort of, I guess I didn't feel that my friends treated me differently just because I was mixed. I felt like we were just, treated like everybody else. Last month that happened at a blackjack table there. There was a Japanese couple there, and they were pretty much learning the game of blackjack. I had to help them a little bit, and so I did explain it a little bit in Japanese. They're like, "Oh wow, you speak Japanese? Your Japanese is great." And I'm like, "Oh no, it's not. It's not that great." But so it's interesting, because yeah, I just come across people where they're just surprised, I guess, or catch them off guard. So I started playing poker in '03 actually, and coincidentally this was a time where poker started to become really big because of Chris Moneymaker when he won the World Series of Poker that year. It was shown on ESPN, everybody's watching it, and seeing, oh wow, that's really easy. I mean, anybody can play that, and just, I think it really piqued the interest of a lot of people out there. I guess the thing I did like about poker right away was that saw it as a challenge to learn a new game, and also that it was also a game of skill, involved a certain level of skill, and not just purely luck. Started playing a little bit more online, mostly to learn the game better, more for practice. Those long sessions where I just sit there and analyze hands and things like that, and also nice side income as well, which is always nice. And so I could see that I can consistently win playing a certain style, and that it was a good just opportunity to make some extra money. It's really a game of you go to war with people. It's a battle out there, and you're going against people. You're playing against each other. There are no friends out there, and I think I like the competitive aspect of poker as well. I've run into some of the pros that you see on TV. Mostly at the World Series of Poker that's held in June every year at the Rio. It's actually now at the Rio. But if you go there, it's just an amazing scene. Just a big convention center filled with hundreds of tables, and you walk in, all you hear is the sound of chips, people shuffling chips, and it's really amazing if you are a card player. I encourage any card players out there to go and check it out.
Well, I've never necessarily felt, oh, I wish I was one thing or the other. I'm definitely very proud and glad that I'm Asian. Few reasons. One, I think Asian food, all different countries, is better than the other main regions of the world. And two, after having traveled in Asia, it was nice because people thought, depending on what country we were from, they thought one of us was from there. So I felt like that was an advantage, even though necessarily, American born and raised, like Vietnamese or whatever coming, that's not really seen as necessarily a good thing. But I still felt like, there's Chinese people all over the place. So when they found out I was Chinese, I felt like, it kind of gives you the edge or whatever. You have a connection with someone, even if, you're not from there, that, when we meet European tourists, not to say that they didn't have a good time, but I felt like there is something, different about our experience than theirs. Definitely because people treat you differently if you're from a different country than another person, but I felt like also our, ancestral background was kind of fun. That was my opinion.
Well, I feel lucky to be of like two major cultures. I feel like I get the best of both worlds, and I wouldn't be able to pick like one culture over the other one, just because I feel like both of them are who I am and have like shaped me like as a person.
I think just being mixed, it gives me at least the opportunity to explore different sides of myself. Although I don't identify much with my Hispanic side, it gives me a chance to just kind of see that I am different, you know, from other people. And I guess just at least the opportunity to explore different cultures.
So I'm proud to be mostly Chinese because Chinese are everywhere. So that's nice, but I'm proud of everything. But Chinese connection. Whoop, whoop. Matt would always make me
you can be proud of it. You haven't done anything to do it. You're just born that way.
I know. So you can still be proud to be born some way.
And they don't treat you differently because of your ancestral background. They treat you differently because of how you look.
I know. And why do you think someone looks the way they look?
Yeah, it's because of your background. But
Yeah, who would always make me go talk to the Chinese lady to buy bus tickets or arrange a hotel?
Oh, that's because I don't like talking to those little ladies.
No, he thinks I have a connection. Which who's to say if it's
You don't have
all
a
in our
connection.
heads or what?
They treat you differently.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's just leveraging
That-
what we were talking about earlier.
It's
People treat you differently based
so
on
I'm
the judgments
glad
they
I'm
make
glad
about
to
you.
be Asian based on that judgment.
Okay. I'm glad to be me.